I completely agree. I mean, the 2 points that I was going to make was, first of all, keep it relevant. So start local. In our case, I think very closely engaged with clinicians and managers in the health service, and then scale. So I think don't start the other way around. So that's the first thing that I would say. And second, I think it plays exactly to the iTunes point is, and I know it sounds very obvious, but start with the problem, not the solution. So, I think making the case and understanding the problem that's being solved and shifting the debate through 180 degrees and understanding very clearly what problem needs to be solved and how things add value. And I think there's some very good examples of where that happens, but equally I think there's some very good examples of where an awful lot of water is pushed uphill with solutions trying to find the problems. And I think a lot more effort probably needs to be put into that end to generate the pull.
Jackie?
I think with medical devices, it's difficult in a way to really drive innovation very, very quickly. You have to prove that the medical device works, that it's safe, that there's patient benefit, and of course we all work to get to that. I think the frustration is how do we accelerate those within the NHS, and we've always in the UK been a little bit slow at adopting new technologies and new therapies as opposed to other European countries and the US. I think ITAP is a great start, but we really need some platforms that will help consistently assess, monitor, and then review technologies as we bring them in.
Clay?
So I think you have to aim big to start, because most things, the benefits are never realized to the same scale that you want. So you have to aim for something that's actually going to be somewhat transformational when you go for innovation. Then you have to find a way actually to know when to let go, which is even harder, particularly if I think about the NHS and the number of entrepreneurs that are really represented in the NHS, right? So a number of people have said the hardest thing to do is to stop. And we've all run businesses here, and the hardest thing to do is to stop. You find something you're passionate about, at some point you have to stop. So you got to pick the top three, make sure they're big enough, and then as things don't mature and some of the others and aren't realized, then you have to stop. And finally, you have to make sure it's implementable. So great ideas are only great if they actually have big targets and they are implementable. And figuring all the human factors in that Jim talked about, which is, are you actually going to get rid of the beds? Are the nurses actually going to transition from one area to another? Can it actually happen? And will someone sign up for it?
Yeah. Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, if you come to the Care Innovation stand, we've got some really great technological innovation there. If you go to the Cisco stand, the BT stand, it's the same. And technological innovation alone is not enough. You can buy technology, buy innovation, and come back to a PCT a year later and half of it's still sitting in the cupboards. Change management lies at the core of a lot of this as well. How are we going to re-engineer our processes? How are we going to do things differently? That's what's got to be fixed before you can really realize the benefit of technology. I was with the Other Kings Fund last week. Steve Johnson from the Department of Health was there, and he said a similar message. It's not just about the technology. It's got to be coupled with change management, change the process.
Jim, presumably none of this is new to you.
No, I think that was a very strong set of suggestions. Certainly, if you talk to John Oldham leading our long-term conditions work, he's absolutely the view that you have to do the service redesign and bring the technology in. There's no point dropping technology onto poorly organised, outdated services. So I think it's a strong point.
Okay, well, let's take some questions from the audience. Who'd like to? You have a serious body of management advice here of top expertise. It would be a pity for you not to take advantage by asking a question that is on the tip of your tongue, either from any of our panelists individually or a general point that we can put to them. Who'd like to kick off? I don't want this to be the very first session where we had no questions at all from the audience. So no matter how shy, yes, the lady over there. Thank you for kicking it off, madam. Could you just give us your name and the organisation you represent?
Yes, I'm Pat Keeling. I'm Director of Strategic Change, and I work for Surrey and Borders Partnership Trust in the South. I'm very interested in what is it Clay, has said in terms of BT. We've been working very closely with BT in terms of inputting part of the national programme, but actually I'm much more interested in what BT have to offer us in relation to what Clay's related to about reducing activity, visits, and ultimately replacing built footprint with IT. And what concerns me is centrally the strategic approach in terms of estate management at the NHS at the moment. Property Co is being advocated as the way forward. That's exactly what I would expect from the estate's advice from the NHS, but actually that's not what we need in terms of modernising services. What we need is estate to be given to FTs who can turn that asset into IT assets, as well as some improvement in terms of built assets. And I'd like to know actually how Jim and Clay might take that forward for us.
Well, do you want to come in first on that, Jim?
You've managed to land on part of the huge landscape of my ignorance in terms of detail. So I've got some tangential understanding of the debates around how we put asset management in the right place to drive the efficiency agenda. But it sounds as though you're far more expert than me. I do think part of our inertia is a buildings mentality. Of course, it's a conspiracy between us and the public, which is that we encourage. And I do think part of our problem is that often when we've replaced the buildings with the promise of great community services, the community services have been mediocre that we provide. So we really do need to use the things that are in this event to show what really fantastic care you can do, not just that someone will, in an uncoordinated way, be knocking on your door rather than you having some identifiable facility. But I agree with you that you have to take the pipeline of value and put it to where it needs to be, but I'm not competent to...
Clay, do you or anyone else want to come in on that?
I mean, the only thing I'd add is that we have a lot of experience with many customers, both within health and outside of health, at doing property consolidation. And we've done it ourselves. So I'm not quite sure exactly the specifics of your question, but we've done quite a bit of it, actually, with a number of the partners up here in terms of Accenture and Cisco. So you're looking at a very experienced crew.